Thursday, October 1st, 1942. Dear Kitty, I got a terrible shock yesterday. Suddenly at 8 o'clock, the bell rang loudly. Of course, I thought someone had come. You'll guess who I mean, but I calmed down a bit when everyone said it must be some urchins or perhaps the postman. The days are become very quiet here. Lewin, a small Jewish chemist and dispenser, works for Mr. Kraler in the kitchen. He knows the whole building well, and therefore we are always afraid that he'll take it into his head to have a peep into the old laboratory. We are as quiet as mice. Who 3 months ago would have ever guessed that Quicksilver Ann would have to sit still for hours? And what's more, that I even could. The 29th was Mrs. Van Dan's birthday. Although it could not be celebrated in a big way, we managed a little party in her honor with a especially nice meal, and she received some small presents and flowers, red carnations from her husband that seemed to be a family tradition. To pause for a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Daan, I must tell you that her attempts to flirt with Daddy are a continual source of irritation for me. She strokes his face and hair, pulls her skirt right up, and makes so-called witty remarks, trying in this way to attract Pim's attention. Pim, thank goodness, doesn't find either attractive or funny, so he doesn't play ball. Mummy doesn't behave like that with Mr. Van Daan, and I've said that to Mrs. Van Daan's face. Now and then Peter comes out of his shell and can be quite funny. We have one thing in common, from which we usually get a lot of amusement. We both love dressing up. He appeared in one of Mrs. Van Daan's very narrow dresses, and I put on his suit. He wore a hat and a cap, and the grown-ups were doubled up with laughter, and we enjoyed ourselves as much as they did. Ellie brought new skirts for Margot and Mia, being Genkorf's. The material is rotten, just like sacking, and they cost 24 florins and 7.50 florins respectively. So florins must be their version of money. What a difference compared with before the war. Another nice thing I've been keeping up my sleeve, Ellie has written to some secretarial school or another and ordered a correspondence course in shorthand for Margot, Peter, and me. You wait and see what perfect experts we shall be by next year. In any case, it's extremely important to be able to write in code. Yours, Anne. Sunday, October 3rd, 1942. Dear Kitty, there was another dust-up yesterday. Mummy kicked up a frightful row and told Daddy just what she thought of me. Then she had an awful fit of tears, so of course I went too, and then I got such an awful headache anyway. Finally, I told Daddy that I was much more fond of him than Mummy, to which he replied that I'd get over that. But I don't believe it. I have to simply force myself to stay calm with her. Daddy wishes that I would sometimes volunteer to help Mummy when she doesn't feel well or has a headache, but I shan't. I am working hard at my French, and I am now reading La Belle Nirvanas. Yours, Anne. Okay, so she's not getting along with her mom, and she's loving her dad. And I noticed that with a lot of us. Sometimes we get along better with one parent than the other, but we need to give that other parent, we need to try to be nice to them, even if we don't feel like we like them very much or we're not getting along with them. And in quarantine, it's harder to get along with the people in our house. We have got to love and do something nice for them. Okay, Friday, October 9th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I've only got dismal and depressing news for you today. Our many Jewish friends are being taken away by the dozen. These people are being treated by the Gestapo without a shred of decency. They are being loaded into cattle trucks and sent to Westerbrook, the big Jewish camp at Dente. Westerbrook sounds terrible. Only one washing cubicle for 100 people and not nearly enough lavatories. There is no separate accommodations. Men, women, and children all sleep together. One hears of frightful immorality because of this, and a lot of women and even girls are expecting babies. It is impossible to escape. Most of the people in the camp are branded as inmates by their shaven heads and may also by their Jewish appearance. It is as bad as this in Holland. Whatever will it be like in the distant and barbarous regions they are sent to? We assume that most of them are murdered. The English rodeo speaks of them being gassed. Perhaps this is the quickest way to die. I feel so upset. I couldn't tear myself away while Meep told these dreadful stories, and she herself was equally wound up for that matter. Just recently, for instance, a poor crippled Jewish was sitting on her doorstep. She had been told to wait there by the Gestapo, who had gone to fetch a car to take her away. The poor old thing was terrified by the guns that were shooting at English planes overhead and by the glaring beams of the searchlights. But Meep did not take her in, and no one could undergo such a risk. The Germans strike without the slightest mercy. Ellie, too, is very quiet. Her boyfriend has got to go to Germany. She is afraid that the airmen who fly over our homes will drop their bombs, all weighing 1,000,000 kilos on Dirk's head. Jokes such as, "He's not likely to get 1,000,000, and it only takes a bomb," are in rather bad taste. Dirk is certainly not the only one who has to go. Trainloads of boys leave daily. If they stop at a small station en route, sometimes some of them manage to go out unnoticed and escape. Perhaps a few manage it. This, however, is not the end of my bad news. Have you heard of the word hostages? That's the latest thing in penalties for sabotage. Can you imagine anything so dreadful? Prominent citizens, innocent people, are thrown into prison to await their fate. If the saboteur can't be traced, the Gestapo simply put about 5 hostages against the wall. Announcements of their death appear in the paper frequently. These outrages are described as fatal accidents. Nice people, those Germans, to think that I was one of them too. No, Hitler took away our nationality long ago. In fact, Germans and Jews are the greatest enemies in the world. Yours, Anne.